Okay, this is the advanced math review. Okay, make sure your calculator is in degree mode. Okay, that's shift menu. Down to angle, make sure it says degree or everything's going to be wrong. Okay, so the first example says find all the theta for where theta is between 0 and 360. Okay, so what you do is you do cosine -1 and put in that amount. Okay, so shift, let me go back to the blank screen. All right, shift cosine. All right, I'm going to put them out at 0.6541. Okay, that's going to give me my first angle, which is going to be 49 degrees. Will be the first one that works. Okay, as the directions say, you should have 2 answers. Okay, so what you have to think about is where is 49? Well, 49 degrees would be here. Okay, so I would have triangles. When it's here, that's going to be 49. Okay, now to get this triangle here, I do 180 minus 49. And to get the other triangle, it's 180 plus 49. And the other one's going to be 360 minus 49. Okay, so going around there. So that's going to be 131. Okay, that's going to be 229. And that's going to be 311. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cosine of all these amounts. Okay, so cosine of 131, cosine of 229, and cosine of 311. Now, what I'm looking for is the sign. Okay, all the amounts are going to be the same. Okay, so if I take cosine of 131, okay, that's a negative. Cosine of 229, all right, that's also a negative. Cosine of 311, okay, that's positive. And since my result was positive, that is the other angle, which will be 311. All right, so that's number 1. Okay, number 2. Now, as you notice here, it's cosecant. So what you have to do there is you're going to take inverse sine, but you're going to do 1 divided by negative 1.4567. Okay, since there's no inverse cosecant button. Okay, so, okay, my computer froze. There we go. All right, so I'm going to do inverse sine, 1 divided by negative 1.4567. Okay, so that gives me negative 43 degrees. Okay, now I don't want to deal with a negative angle, so I'm going to add 360 to that. So my first angle that works is actually 317. Okay, so I got negative 43. Okay, I added 360 to that. So the first one that actually worked was 317. Okay, I need one more angle. All right, so 317 would be down here. Now to figure out what's going to be in the corner, I would do 360 minus 317. That will tell me what's going to be in that corner, which would happen to be 43. Okay, so all of them will have 43 in that corner. Okay, this one's going to be easy. That one will just be, these always match up, as you noticed in the first example. To get the other ones, I do 180 minus 43 and 180 plus 43. Okay, and that's how I would get this to be 223. Okay, all right, and I would also get this to be 137. And once again, I'm going to take the sine of all those. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sine of 43. Okay, that's a positive number. Sine of 137, it's a positive number. Sine of 223, which is a negative number. And since my answer was negative, the other one I'm going to have is 223. Okay, so those are going to be my 2 answers. So the bottom line is whatever you take, they have to match up with the sign. Okay, it says find all the values. It's almost the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do inverse sine. Okay, inverse sine, negative square root of 3 divided by 2. Okay, and that's going to give me negative 60 for my first angle. Now I don't want negative 60. I'm going to add 360 to that. So my first one that works is 300. Okay, so 300 would be down here. Okay, so the way I figure out what goes inside is 360 minus 300. Okay, so for that quadrant, so they're all going to be 60-degree triangles. Okay, this outside angle will be 60 to get these other 2. 180 plus 60, 180 minus 60. Obviously, the 180 minus 60 would be 120. This would be 240. Okay, just remember your quadrants as you go around. All right, once again, I'm going to take the sine of all these, sine of 60, sine of 120, and sine of 240, and I'm looking for the one that's going to be negative, okay? All right, good rule of thumb is you're only going to have one that's different on this group. Sine of 60, sine of 120, sine of 240. But as you notice, you have 3 positives and 1 negative. So it's pretty easy to see that this other one's got to be 240. So the 2 angles that worked were 300 and 240, okay? Find all values such that tan is going to be that, okay? Same deal, inverse tangent, okay? I have square root of 3 divided by 3, okay? So the first angle that works there is 30 degrees, okay? So that's actually pretty easy, okay? Because 30 and 30 would match up. All of these would have an interior of 30 degrees, okay? To get this one here, that's 360 minus 30, which would be 330. And then to get these other ones, it would be 180 minus 30, 180 plus 30. Okay? Through logic, you know that would be 150 and 210. Okay? Because that's 180 right there. Once again, I'm going to take the tangent of all those. Okay? So tangent of 150, tangent of 210, and tangent of 330. Okay? Once again, you're going to have two that are the same, one is different. So tan 150, okay, tan 210, okay, and tan 330. As you can see, you have 2 negatives and a positive. Since my answer is positive, that's the other angle that I want. So my 2 angles that worked were 30 and 210. Okay. It says graph. All right. Next one says graph theta 3 pi over 4. Then find each of the following. The degree measure. All right, very simply, what you can do is you just multiply by pi over 180 over pi, okay? Now what ends up happening is the pi's go away, so really all you got to do is multiply 3/4 times 180, okay? That's going to get your measure, 13/4 times 180, okay? Times 180, okay? So that's going to be 585, okay? That's the degree measure, okay? Now, what they're talking about there as far as reference angles is, well, what I would do is figure out, first, we usually work with stuff that's between 0 and 360. So what I would do is I would subtract 360 degrees. Okay, so that's going to end up being 225. So that's really, that's sort of skipping down here, but that's really going to be a positive coterminal angle. Okay, all right, because they're at the same position. Now the reference angle, 225 would be here, okay? This is 180. So what they're talking about with the reference angle is what's in the corner here, okay? The way I would get that is do 225 minus 180, and that ends up being 45 degrees. Now the directions say write it in radians, okay? Well, how do I convert that to a radian? Well, just multiply by 108 pi over 180, okay? So what I got is 45 times 1 over 180. Okay, which ends up being about 1/4 pi. Okay, that's the reference angle. All right, got one coterminal. Find the exact trig functions. Okay, now for doing those exact trig functions, okay, what you have to look at, all right, I'm going to draw this here, is there's 3 triangles. The 45, where it's 1, 1 square root of 2. The 30, which is 1 square root of 3 and 2. And the 60, okay, which is square root of 3, 1 and 2, okay? In each one of these, this is H, O, and A, all right? Now, another thing you have to keep in mind as you do these, okay, is as you go around, certain things are going to be positive and negative. These will be positive and positive. This will be negative and positive. This will be negative and negative. This thing will be positive and negative. And what we're treating these like are X's and Y's, okay? All right, we learned earlier this year that X is basically going to be like A and Y is basically going to be like O. All right, so if I look in this, all right, I have a 45 degrees. So this is the triangle I'm going to use. All right, H, O, and A. So the sine of that is 1 over the square root of 2, okay, which is, if you simplify that, would be square root of 2 over 2, okay? Now, all right, this was O over H. Now, what we know is if we're down in that quadrant, that O has to be negative. So that's going to be negative square root of 2 over 2. For cosine, it's very similar, all right? 1 over, or negative 1 over the square root of 2. Okay, you can put your negatives in right now, because you know that both of those are negative, and that's going to turn into negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay? All right, for tangent. Tangent's going to be, all right, so that was A over H. Tangent's going to be O over H, which would be negative 1 over negative 1, which would simplify to 1. Okay? So I believe that's page 1 of our sheet. Make sure you use these, okay? Combo that with what's in those quadrants. Okay? All right, it says graph the angle negative 150 and find each of the following degrees. All right, well, what I'm going to do in doing that is I'm going to do negative 50 plus 360. That's going to give you an idea of where that is. That's 210. It's actually in the same quadrant. So 210 ends up being about right there. Okay? All right, the radian measure. All right? Very simply, we can just divide by 180 to get that radian measure. So I got negative 150 divided by 180. Okay? As a fraction, that's negative 6/5 pi. Good rule of thumb is your pi is always going to be up top there. What's my reference angle in degrees? Well, here's the deal. This is 210, this is 180. To do that, I need to do 210 minus 180, which would be 30 degrees. So there's 30 right there. There's my reference angle in degrees. What's one positive coterminal angle? We've already come up with that. That's 210. Find the exact value, okay? Now, for that, since I'm 30 degrees, that's going to be 1 square root of 3 and 2. You got to memorize that. Since I'm down in that quadrant, I know that both this and this are going to be negative. So H, O, and A. All right? Sine. Sine is O over H. So that's negative 1 over 2. Okay? Cosine is A over H, which is negative square root of 3 over 2. And tangent would be O over A, which is negative square root of 3 over, I'm sorry, negative 1 over negative square root of 3. Now, what that's going to do, those are going to turn into a positive. So basically, I got square root of 3 over 3 from a rationalization standpoint. Okay? Using the exact values at 330. So what I should do is look, where's 330 at? Okay? 330 would be down here. And what I would do is subtract that from 360 to figure out this is also 30 degrees. Okay? So I have a very similar triangle. That's 1 square root of 3 and 2. But in this quadrant, the only thing negative will be the y. So 1 will be the only thing that's negative. So sine. Sine is going to be negative 1/2. Cosine is going to be A over H. Okay? O over H. O over A. Remember SOHCA, TOA. Okay? All right? So your tangent, cosine would be square root of 3 over 2. Okay? Tangent would be negative 1 over the square root of 3, which the negative is going to stay. It's going to be negative square root of 3 over 3. Cosecant, you just flip these around, is H over O, which is 2 over the square root of 3. What ends up happening when you rationalize is that's 2 square root of 3 over 3. Secant is going to be H over A. Okay? Whoops, I did that wrong. Hold on. That's not right. Okay? If you do H over O on that one, that's going to be 2 over negative 1, which is negative 2. This one is the 2 square root of 3, which will turn into 2 square root of 3 over 3. My cotangent is A over O, okay, which would be square root of 3 over negative 1, which that's just going to be negative square root of 3. Okay, so that's the exact values. All right, using the unit circle, find the exact values. Okay, so this is just a little bit more of a condensed version of what we just did. Okay, 315 would be down here. Okay, remember this is 270, this is 180, this is 90, this is the 0, 360 line. Okay, at 315, okay, that would be a 45-degree angle from subtracting those two. So a 45-degree triangle is 1, 1, square root of 2, H, O, and A. Now in this quadrant, the y would be negative, so that would be there. So my sine would be negative square root of 1, negative 1 over the square root of 2, which turns into negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay? I'm going to do the degree ones for now, and then I'll show you the radian conversions. I'm going to skip over here to tangent. All right, I don't like negative 60, so I'm going to add 360, so that'd be 300. Okay, once again, I'm down in this quadrant here. Okay, 300. That would make this 60. So I got a 60-degree triangle, which is square root of 3, 1, and 2. And that's also going to be negative H, O, and A. All right, tangent is O over A. So I got negative square root of 3 over 1, which is negative square root of 3. All right, my last degree one is 210. Okay, 210 would be down in this quadrant here, okay? What I want to do is subtract that from 180. Never go to 270 or 90, always to these end ones. So that's going to be 30 degrees, all right? So that's 30, so I got 1 square root of 3 and 2, okay, HO and A. Now, I know since it's down this quadrant, both of these are negative, all right? Secant is going to be H over A, okay, which is 2 over negative square root of 3, which turns into negative 2 square root of 3 over 3, all right? Now, for the radian measures, okay, what I'm going to do for the radian measures is I'm just going to take 5/6, okay, and I'm going to multiply by 180, okay? So that's really 150 degrees, okay? This one, I'm going to do negative 3 over 2 times 180. That's negative 270. But what I want to do is I want to work with a positive angle, so that's going to be cosecant of 90. Okay? And then I'm going to do this cotangent of 8 pi over 3, which basically, once again, is still multiplied by 180. So to go from radians to degrees, you multiply by 180. That's too big, so I subtract 360. So that's really 120 degrees. Okay? All right? Now, for cosine of 150, all right? So we move this negative square root of 2 over 2 down here. All right? So 150 would put me in this quadrant. So once again, I'm going to subtract from 180 and get this to be 30. Okay? So my 30-degree triangle, that's 1 square root of 3 and 2. And in this quadrant, only the x is negative. All right? So this is cosine, which is h over a, which is negative square root of 3 over 2. Okay? Let's go to this one here, because that's 120. Okay? 120 would also be in this quadrant. Okay? I'm going to subtract from 180, which would make this 60. Okay? In a 60-degree triangle, this is square root of 3, 1 and 2. And since this is going to be negative, so HO and A. All right? Cotangent will be A over O, which will be negative 1 over the square root of 3, which will turn into negative square root of 3 over 3. All right, this one, what I should do, all right, I don't have a, when you have the 90, the 180, the 270, the 360, take the sine of 90, okay? Take the sine of 90, okay? It's a very simple answer. Whoops, that's 900. Sine of 90, which will be 1, okay? All right, now, a good rule of thumb for what you're doing with cosecant and all the inverse ones, okay? If it's 1, it's going to stay 1. If it's negative 1, it stays 1. If it's 0, it will turn into undefined. So if this is sine, cosine, and tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent follow this rule. If it's undefined, it turns into 0. So in my case, the sine of 90 was 1, so that's going to stay 1. All right? Moving on to this part, okay? Let's see how much I got left of this. I got a couple more pages. All right? Okay. All right, so let's see if we get through these. We might be able to get through these couple. Actually, I'm going to stop there. It's probably going to be thirds of videos. Okay, so that's the first 2 pages, okay? And then I'll continue with the rest in the next video.